It's your boy DK_typical TV, and today we're going to be working with the Arduino Uno in Lab 5. In this lab, we're going to be using a lot of items. The bill of materials we're going to be using are a Ditto, a MOSFET transistor, a 9-volt battery, a potentiometer, various wires and jumpers, the breadboard, the Arduino, push button, standard LEDs, and a DC motor. Now, in this first exercise, I believe 5-1, we're going to be working with the LEDs mainly. As you can see, with the LED, we're going to be light changing intensity, so various levels of light. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but with this light, the program we set, so we have it set to goes from 25% to 50 to 75 to 100% on. As you can look closely, you can kind of see the change in the intensity of the light. It slowly gets brighter. Okay, so I have programmed. As you can see, the LED. I took a second and changed the amount of seconds in between each level. Hopefully, you can tell now. It's still very hard being it's a LED, but when you look at the code here in the void loop section, there's the analog write for the LED for a certain number. So that number is classified as pretty much the intensity of the LED. So on to exercise 5-2, introduction to DC motors, or just motors in general. In this exercise, we're pretty much just going to be having the DC motor controlled by a potentiometer. So as you can see, the way I wired it, I used the 9-volt battery on the side because the Arduino itself couldn't support the power for the motor. So I programmed the potentiometer with the motor to the 9-volt battery so the potentiometer can control whether the DC motor can turn on and off. So when you see it jump, that's when the motor comes on. So I'm turning the potentiometer all the way up. Now on to exercise 5-3, motor controls with the Arduino and transistor. In this exercise, we're going to be essentially wiring the Arduino, the DC motor, and the potentiometer with a MOSFET transistor and a Ditto all together. So I wired all those items together so I can essentially have the Arduino to power the motor. Okay, as you can see, it's on right now because I turned the transistor up. So as I'm turning the transistor down, motor goes off. Turn it on, motor goes on, and turns on. Now when you look at the code here in a second, you'll see that I programmed it in a way to where, so essentially I have the pot or potentiometer going to input, or as my input, which is A0, my output, which is the motor, which would be pin 9, as you can see. And then I have where the code reads the level of the potentiometer. Now as you can see in the code, I have it set to where the BWM, I believe, PWMV is essentially the pin for the motor, and the pot is the value of the potentiometer. Last exercise 5-4, is essentially a modification from the previous exercise 5-3. In this exercise, we essentially added a push button into the mix, and with this circuit, we had to use an if then else statement in the code, to where if the potentiometer is greater than a certain value, which is 500, and the push button is on, then the motor runs. So as you can see, the value of the potentiometer is up, push button is not pressed. So when I turn the potentiometer down, you'll see in the serial monitor that it goes to 0, which is the pot value, and the push button is also at 1 because it's off, because I'm not pressing it. So when I turn the potentiometer all the way up, and then when I press the button, as you can see, the motor jumps a little bit, so that means it's on. I'm not sure. You can see the wheel turning a little bit. All right. So then when I go back to the code, you'll see in a second, you'll see that the push button value is 0. So I'm pushing on and off. So as I'm pushing it, you see the 0. You see the PBV value go to 0, and then you see the potentiometers the motor's at 255. The motor value is at 255. So I unpress the button, the PBV value is at 1, and the potentiometer is still at its high value. I press the button, the motor value goes to 255. And as you see at the bottom, that's where I use the if then else statement. So yeah, I'm pushing the button, value of potentiometer still up. There's my circuit.